All right, welcome everybody. We're in New Orleans, Louisiana. We're here in Jackson Square under the eyes of the Catholic Church, and a block away, right behind the church, is the Vampire Cafe. I mention that because we're sitting here with Dacre Stoker.
Thank you, Jeff. Nice to be here.
You as well.
Always good to come back to New Orleans. See you again.
And you're an author. You've written some vampire stories and other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky enough. I was born into a pretty important family. Bram Stoker, author of Dracula, is my great-granduncle, and I've written a prequel and a sequel to Dracula, both international bestsellers.
And I've read Dracula, and honestly, it is fantastic.
Well, thank you.
I read a lot of horror, grew up on Anne Rice and all of that as well, old school goth, so it's good stuff.
Well, J.D. Barker and I, who co-authored with me, we wanted to bring back Bram Stoker's original Dracula. You know,
Nice.
there is the Dracula that has emerged since, 1897, and he's changed many times over, and now it could be a sparkly vampire somewhere, but we're going back to...
We're not doing sparkly vampires.
No, we're going
today.
the Man in Black himself, back to Count Dracula as Bram described him.
Good, I like that.
Yeah.
But we're not really going to talk about Dracula today. What I really want to talk about is what this has done for you for traveling. You've been all over the place, Ireland, Scotland, Transylvania, and I know you've been to New Orleans a number of times.
Yeah, well, it is about Dracula in a way, though, Jeff, because it's my search for the truth, my search for what Bram Stoker knew about vampires, how he derived his famous character, and it has brought me to many places. And, you know, I've got to come to start in the U.S. You know, I've been to the New England states where the vampire outbreak, the vampire scare, the tuberculosis outbreak in the late 1800s, did stimulate Bram. He saw a newspaper article. He was here in New Orleans himself with Henry Irving, so I had to come here.
That was 1916, right?
No, it was a little bit before that, 1893, 94 with the Lyceum Theater. He died in 1912, so maybe his spirit came back in 1916, but he was here with the Lyceum Theater. That was his real job. But while he was here, I was trying to look, did he learn much of your own vampire lore that was here?
Yeah.
And there is a lot of it. Yeah. Obviously, people know, you want the vampire center of the world, you come to New Orleans.
It's a huge industry for us, our ghost tours and everything else.
Absolutely. The Carter brothers, Saint Germain, the Casket Girls, it's just so deep. Yeah. And then, of course, you get into the Cajun culture with, Loup Garou and all these things. So I just wanted to try to figure out any records, anything I could find of what Bram may have picked up here. That made its way into Dracula, or just into his consciousness, or made its way into some of his other stories.
So did New Orleans have an influence? We're not sure yet, huh?
We're still not sure. But you know,
be cool.
He was still writing the novel while he was here, so that is pretty cool. But you're right. You mentioned Transylvania, Ireland, England, Scotland. Bram Stoker did a lot of traveling because of it being a theatrical manager, but he also took holidays from time to time. So I've taken people to the one town in Whitby in Yorkshire in England where Bram was so stimulated by the Gothic environment that he changed setting it from Dover to Whitby. And boy, when I take tours there, people wander around going, this is it. This is like Mecca, because chapters 6, 7, and 8 of Dracula are set in this town, and the town is exactly the same way today as it was when he was there. The historic sites are still there. The graveyards are there. The 199 steps. The tour house that Bram stayed in, and that he had
New Orleans. And
exactly. There's good historic preservation, and with that leads us the opportunity to have good tourism there, because people can go and feel the vibe, walk in the steps of the author. If they're lucky, sit down in the same area, maybe not the same cafe, but the same area, and just feel it, absorb what that author did while he was conjuring up his story.
It's like in New Orleans, following the footsteps of Mark Twain and his influence at New Orleans was. I do that on my tour. Mark Twain stayed there. Mark Twain ate there.
Yep.
Beautiful.
And I'm lucky to be able to do that. I've even found the town in Cruden Bay, Scotland, where I take people where the hotel is still there. The room is still there that Bram was there. The castle that Bram visited, Slane's castle, that he used for his model for his interior Castle Dracula.
This has got to be the ultimate Gothic geek experience.
It is. It's a literary tour, but it's also, the Gothic geek tour. You get to walk on the beach where Bram was thinking about the story. We know the exact rocks that he sat on because he described them. When the tide goes out, sit on these rocks and write his story. So you feel it. I even encourage people to keep a little journal, sort of like Jonathan Harker's journal, when you go to these places, to sort of write down your own thoughts You know, what do you feel like when the storm rolls in? Like, duh, this is what Bram did to conjure up the ship coming in, the Demeter in Whitby. He experienced these really, really tough, almost supernatural storms that had really strange sort of attributes to them.
Kind of like reading a Tennessee Williams play and about him, the settings of New Orleans.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, so, real quickly, what are you doing in New Orleans this weekend?
Well, I'm here to connect with Marita Crandall, who runs the Vampire Cafe Boutique and now the Apothecary. I'm doing an interesting workshop called Dissecting Dracula in 30 Documents.
Dissecting Dracula. Yeah, that's not a play on words there, is it?
Well, it is a little bit, because we are cutting up. I'm actually not cutting up these notes and things, but I've collected 30 documents from around the world, different things, from newspaper articles, Bram's notes, the typescript, and I'm going to help people walk through the same thing that I went through when I was trying to figure out, what Bram did, how did he derive his story. So we're going through those at the Apothecary. We're doing a Jonathan Weiss tour, where we're talking around.
You're doing a vampire tour with Jonathan. I know Jonathan.
Jonathan's buddy of yours, and he does a good tour combining the history. And
honestly, for your vampire tour, he's probably the best man in the city for that.
Well, that's nice to say, because you're in the business yourself.
I do ghost tours. I do a good ghost tour, but I'd rather go talk about Oswald and the Mafia.
Sure. No, but everybody's got their own area of expertise, right? And Jonathan knows vampires, and of course he turns to me every now and then and says, Dacre, what do you think about that? Or what do you think Bram knew? And so I chime in with my
We used to work
theory.
together.
Oh, good.
At the same company.
That's great.
And then we both went out and started our own company. So
well, that's healthy then. Good for you guys.
But I know you're doing like a high tea, and there's a dinner.
Yep. So
and the tour.
Dinner tour, and also just downtime, sucking in the vibe myself.
Yeah. I mean, hey, wait, this is my jam.
There we go. With all the traveling I do, not all of it is personal pleasure. So I try to carve out a day before, day after, to look for places that I haven't been, or just I love getting up early in the morning. By New Orleans standards, that's like 7 or 8, and wandering around.
Time.
Yeah, and there's nobody out in the streets. They're all recovering, or they're just going in. And I wander around. I take in the vibe, see the guys cleaning the streets, and it's just neat. I do the same thing in Transylvania. I got to tell you one thing before we go, though. I got to tell you one cool story. Pretty perilous. My son and I had to do our research and hike up the actual extinct volcano in northeastern Transylvania that was depicted in Bram's notes that live in Philadelphia. The actual lines of longitude and latitude, he put in his notes. So I hired a guide who could convert those to GPS. A couple of my friends went along for protection. And about 4 or 5 hours later, we're up on top of a mountain, about 6,000 to 7,000 feet. And unfortunately, we get to our location. We realize this is the spot, but the weather closes in. We get thunder, we get lightning. I felt like Jonathan Harker, the Borgo Pass.
So you're in the middle of the woods in Transylvania, off the beaten path with this storm rolling in. Oh.
You want a vibe? We had a vibe. We luckily, our guide used to work at a high mountain weather station. He said, guys, in 45 minutes we can get there. We need to go because that storm's coming in. And that's where we hung out for a couple of hours while the storm passed.
At least you had somebody with you that knew.
Exactly. And, it's bear country and it's wolf country. So we were actually able to call some guy.
And vampire country.
Well, yes, that's what they say. To come and get us. It wasn't easy. But it almost made it that much better. I don't want to suggest we put people in peril on our tours.
No.
But it gives you a really great appreciation, right, for what it takes to do the right research so you give your customers a good, comfortable tour and a way out in case things go wrong.
Yeah, that's experiences. Anybody can jump on a tour bus and just look out the window, but to have that moment or something.
You do, because that's what people remember, that experience. The food you've eaten, the people you met, the music you listen to, what's going on around you. It's there, it's in the books and so on. But if you can get an experience that lives with you, then we've done our job.
That's what we do actually as well, So I know from here, you're going somewhere else in the States?
Yeah, I've got something next week in St. Louis.
All right.
In Belleville, just outside of St. Louis. Similar kind of thing. They're putting on a special Dracula Fest, kind of for the whole family. They got kids coloring, they got parades, they got a drag show. They've got me doing Dissecting Dracula. I'm also doing one of my presentations talking about Dracula in film, how the novel moved from Bram's novel to stage to screen, how it's changed so much. What's good, what's bad, what's indifferent. We're going to watch a couple of films And then I'm off to Dublin, Ireland for the Halloween weekend, the Bram Stoker
I saw
Festival.
that, the Stoker, a whole festival named after your family.
Well, that's cool. Bram deserves it. It's his hometown.
Yes.
You know, he's one of the long list of famous Irish writers. And Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu, being another horror writer, was actually somebody that Bram knew. And so those, he gets his festival. So people to this day don't have to rely just on the history books. They can rely upon a wonderful festival, street parades, and they've got a combo of sort of academic stuff, non-academic stuff, music, theater.
I saw they have a whole day for the families, and a lot of it is neurodivergent. It's for children with special needs, no flashy lights and stuff like that.
That's right. That's right.
I love that. My daughter's epileptic, so these things are actually important.
They need to be aware of that, and Dublin is very sensitive to that. I've always thought that's important because you want people to come out, but if it's going to upset some child or make a traumatic experience, it's not a good idea. But they're very sensitive to that.
Well, when you can give that kid a good experience, and that opens up doors for other things.
Certainly, absolutely. They can learn nicely without the threat of something, putting them in great distress or peril.
But the one that really grabs me of all of them is the Transylvania. What do you do, 7 or 10 days?
Yeah, we've actually done the minimum you really want to do is 7, and we've gone as much as 12. It's a big country.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to get around because they don't have super highways, thank goodness. A lot of twisty and turny, lots of cool mountains. So the Transylvania trips usually start in Bucharest, and we actually do a little of both. We do go to places associated with Vlad Dracula, the guy that Bram actually used as part of his model for Count Dracula. And then we go from Wallachia up to Transylvania, which is another province, where Emily Gerard, the Scottish lady who wrote about Transylvanian superstitions that Bram keyed in on, and we see castles along the way. So we've got places associated with Vlad and Bram Stoker's Count Dracula. And we actually do now go back to this plaque that I put up on Mount Israel in the Kalamani Range. We just don't go quite the same way I did. I found an easier way afterwards. Not as dangerous, and we can actually take vehicles in part of the way, and then it's only about a 2-hour hike in, have lunch, and come back out.
And how many people go on this?
We try to cut the minimum to 8 people, and the maximum at 30 people. And so that sort of works. When you do a tour, you've got to kind of fill a vehicle to the right amount and not be overcrowded. So we go in a 14-passenger van, 8 people, and then two people like myself, lots of room for luggage. Or if we got a large group, we go in one of these larger buses.
So you've got a small group of 4 to 15 couples who are just with you for all these days and all these locations.
And we eat meals together, go to museums together, go to castles together. We even, sit down the nighttime and have wine and just chat, do some readings from the book. People talk about their feelings while they're
reading Dracula or horror novels in Transylvania with a glass of wine in your hand with a Stoker.
Does it get much better than that?
Hey, what were you charged, like $100,000 for that?
No. I mean, the airfare they got to pay on their own, which is normally about $1,500 to $1,700, and then the trip itself is somewhere, depending on the days, between $1,500 and $2,000.
It's not bad. I actually looked it up. And the company is Experience Transylvania, experience-transylvania.com.
That's correct. Check them out. They got a good website, and it's it's not 5-star the whole way, but you're certainly staying in nice hotels, eating good food. But we realize people want a good value for what they're getting, and to make sure they're comfortable and safe, and sleep on comfortable beds.
But that's an experience that's. You're not just getting that taking a Gray Line bus tour around the city of New Orleans or something. On the right to church, on the right to graveyard. We're going for coffee and beignets.
Well, and maybe you can get Christopher Rice to have a tour, with people of places associated with Anne and her things.
Well, actually, we did the only Anne Rice tour in the city.
Well, there you go. So you got that pegged.
Yeah. In fact, we had one yesterday. We have one tomorrow. So otherwise, we'd be at the high tea with you tomorrow.
Well, I understand. You got a job to do. And look, this is her playground, right?
Yes.
This is where people come to check her out. People go see Bram in Whitby and Cruden Bay, Scotland, and Transylvania and Dublin, Ireland. But this is her territory, so I try not to infringe too much. But I think the whole vampire vibe. People want to know where it all started, and of course, there's a lot of points where it comes in from history to good fiction.
And all the
writing.
worlds connect too. I mean, Anne Rice was inspired by all of this in the very beginning.
Yeah.
And you said that Bram was here, in the turn of the century with the Lyceum Theater Company. So there had to be some sort of influence, even if it's not on paper. And that influenced Anne, who influenced others, who influenced, and you get to people like Poppy Z. Bright and you and such. So it's fantastic. And I love doing that tour. And what we do on that tour is pretty much what you do. We point out where she was born, the things that influenced her. This little spot where she used to hide as a child. She couldn't go home because mom was, you know, an alcoholic.
Right. So she had to find her own safe places. And
exactly.
Where creative thoughts would run.
Where was her safe place?
Yeah.
The cemetery.
Well, and the rest is history, as they say. Yeah.
It is history, yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
This has been fantastic. I really thank you for taking the time to talk about your travels.
Well, you're welcome.
Any really funny experience besides getting caught in a storm in a mountain?
Ooh.
I know I've seen some pictures of you guys in Transylvania, and you have a crew that fully dress up.
Oh, yeah.
Or those the folks in Ireland?
No. Well, I mean, they do it all over, but we specifically do it for a big dinner in Whitby. There is a group run by a friend of mine who's kind of like a cosplay group in Whitby, Allison and Gary Cheeseman.
These guys are beyond cosplay.
Oh, they are. They're very serious. And we try to get this big dinner to coincide with May 26th. That's the World Dracula Day. And now we're up to 127 years since Dracula was published. So we started it in the 125th. And then people on my tour, we were optioned if they wanted to bring their stuff. So there's about 30 people from the Whitby area dressed the night. Right? And I got a couple of friends of mine filming this thing from different angles. So it came out looking really good. So if you're watching this, go to my Instagram, Dacre Stoker Author, and you're going to see us. So the whole point is, you know, we do steps. They can't get it. And they say, the hell with it. And rather than doing the dance, they all come over and, of course, drink the blood. You know, I become the meal rather than the dance teacher. So we drew a huge crowd, not on purpose, because we were doing this up on top of East Cliff, Whitby Abbey, right there. All these tourists coming out to see that, and then there's a bunch of vampires doing this silly thing, this dance. It was hilarious. Oh, God.
And it's fun.
And it's fun.
That's the whole point.
Fun. And you know, we go to Cruden Bay, Scotland, and you know, dress up the same way in the same hotel. Bram did his thing, and I was able to erect a plaque there as well. So part of my thing, Jeff, is not only do I leave tours, but I want to leave something behind. You know, there's a plaque on top of the mountain in Transylvania explaining what it is. There's a plaque now on the hotel in Kilmarnock Arms Hotel in Cruden Bay explaining when Bram came. I'm now trying to work on one in Dublin and also one in Whitby. So it takes, you know, a lot of these sort of planning, government sort of permissions to do it.
Yeah.
But if that is the case, then I've done a step further with literary tourism, that people can go on their own. They can take their phone, put in a Q code, and they can kind of, long after I'm gone, you know, after you're gone, maybe your legacy lives on, much like Bram's with Dracula. People can go and see all this stuff.
If there's any vampires out there, Eternal Life, just give us a call. All right.
He'll show you around New Orleans. All right, man. Thank you very much.
Been fantastic.
Absolutely.
Do one of his tours, save up some money, go to Transylvania, go meet him in Ireland. If you can't do any of those, you're here in New Orleans now on a regular basis, right?
And check out your tours while we're here. Okay.
Yeah. We're talking about you right now. Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely.
Go hit the Vampire Cafe, and even if it's during the middle of the year, jump on one of Jonathan's tours to learn about the vampire lore. Have fun, y'all.
All right. Be safe.
Happy Halloween.
Thank you.
Thank you.